Drive to Win.
Welcome, everybody, to Drive to Win. I'm Justin Bell, your host right here in this beautiful podcast studio inside the Wynn Las Vegas. And, of course, the show is brought to you by Mobil1 for the love of driving. Well, what a crazy season we are enjoying with Formula One. Quite remarkable in so many ways. 3 weeks off between the last couple of races. It almost makes you feel rusty as a fan, but not if you stay in touch with the drivers' various social medias, if you keep in touch with what Formula One are doing. So much news always spinning around. Formula One is just a hotbed, especially this time of year. I mean, it's easy to think to yourself, oh, we're in the last little bit of the season, but it's still like 5 races. So there's quite a lot to play for. And of course, a lot to play for means a lot of money. It means a lot of championship points. And while in the August break, everybody had to down tools, in this break, it was full speed ahead. Everyone trying to bring upgrades to the Austin track at the weekend. And of course, the star of the show, which turned out to be Ferrari with their 1-2 finish, they brought no upgrades at all. So we need to touch on that, how it is easier sometimes to be in the familiar camp with a car that you understand rather than something with all that limited track time. It was a sprint race weekend, remember? So they only had 1 hour practice before they went into sprint qualifying, which meant they really had so little time to fine-tune the cars. Obviously, a lot of work done on the sim before they got there. But Austin, I remember going to the first race. I mean, I can't believe it's like a decade ago. And there it was, this glorious racetrack. It's set amongst these slightly rolling hills. I think it's actually on an old dump. So it is sinking and compressing over the years. But I was there not long ago, if you remember, driving that Solus GT McLaren, incredibly fast. And I was so concerned when I was driving it down the back straight, my head's bouncing up and down. The car had this high speed frequency bumping. The track was so bumpy. I thought, how the heck a Formula One car is going to drive on here? And then I was looking on the broadcast and I could see how they'd scraped all the top of the track off there. So, I mean, they had to do it because Formula One cars literally would have almost wanted to take off, even with their downforce. The track is remarkable, especially when you put it against the ones they've just come off the back of. It is so wide. There is so much runoff area. You feel invincible and you feel that there aren't really as many consequences to your actions. But of course, at the speed that Formula One cars go, when they go off, boy, they do clear that distance to the hedge and hit the wall, as we saw with Lewis. Lewis went in the gravel and George managed to hit the barrier. So, I mean, definitely the Mercedes were having a rotten weekend. The fans love Austin. And when you're there, I can see why. I remember why I actually advise a lot of, dads when they DM me on Instagram and say, oh, I'd love to go to a race. Which one should I go to? Obviously, I'm going to promote Vegas here. But in all honesty, if you got your kids, you want to go there, go to Austin. You can stand on a grassy bank, eat a hot dog and a hamburger, and watch race cars go around. It's pretty much old school in that way, even if it does look like a Technicolor LSD trip when you look at it from the helicopter shots with all those amazing acres of paintwork. But a pretty cool track. Tons of celebrities on hand. That's a big part of the American Grand Prix. It's no wonder we can't, Jeremiah, my producer, and I, we can't get a credential to go because it's jam-packed with influencers and very cool celebrities. But hopefully it gets a bit more focused when they get here into Vegas. I think that's wishful thinking. I think it's going to be just the same. It was a race of contrast and conflict. So that's why my guest today is not Mika Hakkinen. Mika's coming on next week's show. I got that wrong. But we have the very polarizing and opinionated Paul Tracy, ex-IndyCar driver and TV host. He'll be joining me, and I can't wait to dig deep with him because he is never shy of his opinion. This time last year, of course, we were in the middle of the Max Verstappen runaway train. But from Miami onwards, pretty much, it has been so upside down, so unpredictable. Those 3 big teams have each won multiple races. When you look back over the result sheet, you're like, my gosh, this really is a roller coaster. And who is going to be riding the top of the hill when we come to the next one? Well, we'll talk about that a little bit later. So Ferrari, what I loved about it, Ferrari, and we'll dig into it with Paul, Ferrari taking the 2 top spots on the podium are now, believe it or not, even talking about being in the manufacturer hunt. That is how crazy it is when you're looking at the championships that they're that close that suddenly Ferrari have made this a 3-horse race, which is kind of wild. Definitely for McLaren, and we're big McLaren fans here. It was an underperforming weekend for them in so many ways, not what they were expecting. They came in with upgrades. I'm sure Lando, while he was very, very happy with his qualifying lap, and he says it might have been the best lap of his career, in reality, it got him pole. But if George Russell hadn't gone off, Max was on a faster lap. There were about 5 other cars that were still out there to do their final lap in the last couple of minutes. So I don't know if he'd have made pole if they had gone to the end of the time. But, of course, that doesn't matter. He did start on pole, and that led to a fantastic first corner. Again, I want to dive into that. Surprise performances and controversy. That's what this weekend was all about. But I do want to bring special attention to the 2 rookies. Liam Lawson, back in Formula 1 until the end of the year in the RB, sitting in for one of the most popular drivers ever to sit in a Formula 1 car, Daniel Ricciardo. I mean, what tough shoes to fill. And he drove sublimely. It was brilliant. And he showed that he is not a meek-mannered man. I mean, he got into a confrontation with the GOAT, Fernando Alonso, just a man that is so tough, so dominant, so strong, so experienced. He blocked him in the sprint race, ended up having, being like accosted by Fernando, who gave him a piece of his mind, which can't have been that much fun. Ended up on track in the race, doing exactly the same thing, but they raced clean, with respect, very professional, and it just showed that Liam is definitely a guy to be reckoned with. I wonder if Fernando went up to him after the race. That's what I was thinking, to sort of say, hey, man, yeah, that was bad driving and lack of awareness in the sprint, but in the real race, you were heads up and really a man about it. So I hope he did, or at least that's my wishful thinking. And of course, Franco Colapinto in 10th place, once again reminding everybody he really does deserve a top seat next year. But there's no room at that Williams Inn, which is a bit disappointing for him. He is really proving he is, even though in the junior formulas, he wasn't that much of a star. One weekend he'd be great. The next weekend you wouldn't even see him on the result sheet. But some people, when they get a chance, I think it happens in all sports, if they can get to the top leagues, walk into the big stadium under the bright lights with all the fans and under the pressure and the technology, they can actually perform better than they have at any other point in their career. So that's what Franco's doing. And I love the fact that James Vowles and the whole team are giving him support, trying to help him find a seat for next year. So that's pretty cool. And the grid, when it all happened, lined up with Lando on pole, Max next to him, and then the 2 Ferraris behind. And we know how that went. And then it all kicked off. Well, hey, guys, you're listening to this podcast, which probably means driving means a lot to you. And with the Mexican Grand Prix coming up this weekend, it takes me back about 25 years to when my father and I did this international racing series down there. 2 drivers from each country, China, Russia, South America, England, Germany. It was brilliant. And I shot off into the lead. And all Dad said to me, remember, this $100,000 prize giving is only on the aggregate of our 2 positions. So I shot off into the lead thinking I was a hero, promptly spun it off, put it in the wall. My dad finishes 3rd. I had to go back into the pit lane and tell Dad I'd just cost him about $50,000. Anyway, that was one of my childhood memories in Mexico City, driving a very cool car. So I hope everyone has a little bit more luck than I did, but they certainly will be playing for higher stakes. You see, I've always had that love of driving, and that is what Mobil 1 is all about. It is a reminder that even when life starts to feel too full of screens and routines, the ultimate escape is waiting patiently in your driveway. Mobil 1, for the love of driving. Visit loveofdriving.us/drive to win to learn all about it. So at this point, I think it's time to bring in my guest, Paul Tracy. I first met Paul in 1990 in the ARS series here in the States. He won 9 out of 14 races. He was dominant, went on to win the 2003 IndyCar Championship, a regular, very animated and engaging figure on the broadcasting for IndyCar. He's definitely polarizing. He's outspoken. He's got a great personality, character. He's always on his bike, and he's popular because of that. Makes him the perfect guest for today. Paul, welcome to Drive to Win.
It's great to be on with you. I haven't been on the show yet. I've been asking to be on the show. I finally made the cut because somebody else couldn't make it.
Well, no, I told you the other day, I thought we were going to try and get you in here in person, which would have been really cool, but it would have involved a big night out the night before, and we just haven't had the bandwidth for that. So, no, I'm really glad to have you on. But as you just were saying, I'm surprised our paths didn't cross before 1990, but you were driving in Europe a bit at the end of that, right?
I would go over to England during the winter and run some races in the fall in F2000. I think it was 86, 7, and 8. In that era, it was like Blundell and Hakkinen and Johnny Herbert, Gasho, some pretty tough characters in F2000 in England in those days.
Yeah, I mean, was it still the case then, even back all those decades ago, if you wanted to make your name, if you wanted to have any chance of getting to Formula One, you had to go and show your face in Europe, didn't you?
Well, yeah, I mean, my heritage is Irish. My dad's Irish, and all my relatives live in England and Ireland, and we had aunts and uncles over there. So, when I was racing go-karts, I would get sent over there to go racing karts around, in England, and did the World Championships a couple times, and then obviously once I started racing Formula cars, Formula Ford, F2000, it's a fairly short season in Canada, so you've only got a small window of a season. So after our season was over, there was still racing going on in England. So my dad would make a deal with somebody, and obviously I drove for Ralph Furman, and drove for some cars, some Reynards during that time, and would go over after our season was done and just do some racing through the winter. And at that time they had the BBC Grandstand Series, winter series, and that we did that a couple times.
Yeah, no, I mean, it is, as you say, amazing to see every name you said went on to an amazing career. In Vauxhall Lotus, Mika was on the grid with me with Alan Niche in my first ever race there. And I never did karting or anything. And I remember going, God, these kids are quick. I mean, they're wearing that red and white Marlboro stuff, and run by Dragon Racing. Do you remember them? And I finished third a lot, just so you know, a lot, because they were so bloody good. Well, we got you here now because I know you watched Austin. I saw your social media posts. I thought there was a perfect time to bring you on, but we're obviously going to get to the Lando and Max incident, but I don't think that should define the whole race. I was thinking about this morning. That first corner as a driver, I don't know what you're like when you watch a race, but the two Ferraris, they're in third and fourth. They head up that steep hill where you can brake so late, can't you, at Austin? Yeah. And it was so textbook watching how Charles absolutely created space and went down the inside. Are you the same as me when you watch and you can feel the move coming off? Are you the same? You're going, that is bloody brilliant. Is that how you, I mean, that's how I feel anyway.
I mean, you pretty much knew what was going to happen, because that first corner at Austin is very much like, I don't know if you ever raced at Cleveland. Yeah. But it's similar to going down into turn 1 at Cleveland, where everybody goes to the inside to block off the inside. And then they just make the corner too tight for themselves. And if you set yourself up on the proper line, like Charles and Carlos did, then they just got the exit and went by. But backing up, I mean, what a week for Ferrari, right? They unveiled a new F80 supercar and then a 1-2 to back that up. That's a huge week for Ferrari, a huge resurgence, really, right?
Yeah, amazing. Oh, just when you're talking about Cleveland, do you remember that in the best video you can still see on YouTube when John Paul Jr. decided that he couldn't take out, he could go from like 16th to first. He braked down the inside and took out the front guys. You were in that race, weren't you? Did he?
I don't think it was with John Paul, but I had that happen to me by Tagliani, where I was on the pole and he came from about 8th or 9th and cleaned me out from the front row.
Yeah, that's a fun one. Anyway, not good to remember, but good entertainment. Yeah, you're right. Ferrari, talk about the fact that they came with no upgrades to a track where they only had an hour's practice, and it seemed to be the way to go, didn't it?
Yeah, and that's, I mean, Coda's a really technical, tricky track. It's not very super high grip. In most all other cars, it's not super fast and flowing. It's quite corners are quite slow, but for F1 cars, they're bloody quick around there.
Yeah.
I mean, it's got a combination of every type of corner: fast, double, triple apex corners, hairpins, chicanes, off camber, blind. It's got everything. And the Ferrari was on pace from very first practice on. In qualifying, they were strong. And in the race, they drove away, right? Max really wasn't a challenge for them. Lando was pretty quick at the end, but we'll get to that with Max and Lando. I mean, Max just kind of did his thing and masterclass. He forced Lando into an error, which he's so good at.
There's so much to unpack there. But I was thinking about it when I was watching Lewis, obviously on the other side. Ferrari, great. Lewis's weekend, he he was having a horrid time right from the beginning. His headspace was wrong even before the race. He was talking about wanting to get to Mexico, so he must have been in a bad place. When he went off, he said, he hasn't spun all on his own in years and gone off.
And he had a phenomenal start because he passed 5 or 6 cars on the first lap, and he was running well. And then 2 laps in, he spins off, which was very, very rare for him on a track that he really has excelled at historically. I mean, I don't know how many times. I think he's won. What has he won? 5 times?
5 out of the 6 times or something. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, that's one of his good tracks, and it was not a good weekend.
No, but it did set off sort of a little bit of a chain reaction, strategy wise, right at the beginning there. And I watched. I don't know if you watched the race on the main TV or on the app. I kind of like watching it on the app and casting it up onto my TV because I like the broadcasters. But it was interesting with Max. Max did what you really want to do when he was right up behind the Ferrari coming out, for the restarts there. I mean, he was right in place. You thought he was positioning himself, but still Charles had the speed to pull away. But they talk a lot, Paul, about clean and dirty air, right? He was in the dirty air behind the Ferrari, and through those high speed, that first complex. I mean, in sports cars, we don't really have the same thing, so I can't relate to it that much. But in IndyCar, you have that. Can you describe what that's like for a driver? What is the dirty air? Because we hear about it as fans, but for the layman at home, what does that mean?
Well, it's just really you lose all the front grip. The airflow is disturbed across the front wing and the front of the underwing, and you're lacking front grip. And to compound that on a restart, your tires have cooled off. You've got maybe some pickup on the tires, some dirty tires. And through that section of the track, it's so one line through there, and you've got lots of paint and curbs and paint lines. So it's super, super fast in an F1 car and really tricky. If you miss the line, it's so easy to just completely go off the track.
Yeah, they do follow so close to those high speeds. I mean, the direction change, into that turn 3, 4, 5. I mean, I was driving a McLaren there the other day, their Solus GT, and I'm, not out trying to set the world alight, but it's still a fast car. And we were fast through those S's, but then I'm listening to their throttle position, and they are so wide open. I mean, they are so quick through there. It must, and their heads are so well supported now, and their hands look so smooth. But the feedback, Paul, through the steering wheel must be a lot more than we're visibly seeing.
I mean, I've never really driven a power steering open wheel car. I've driven obviously prototypes and DPI cars and sports cars with power steering, but I mean, I don't think the steering is super super heavy and loaded like an Indy car is. Where I think it's it's a lot more manageable with power steering.
So IndyCar would probably be a really hard work through those corners, right?
Yeah, I think, and you start bouncing over curbs and attacking curbs with no power steering.
Yeah.
There's just tremendous amount of kickback in the steering wheel. I mean, when you don't have power steering.
Yeah, yeah. So, well, you and I have both experienced this. It's a driver's worst, nightmare when you start to smell gas, right, as you're driving along.
Yeah.
And Carlos Sainz, quite rightly, and one of my friends was like, I don't get the big deal. I said, you wait until you're strapped in with all the hands device, you've got the halo, and you start to smell gas. It's not a fun thing. But I thought it was interesting because obviously when you're dealing with that in the car, it does take your eye off the ball a bit, doesn't it? You definitely aren't focusing and you drop back a little bit. You're trying to sort it out. But it really showed to me the brilliance of the power of the telemetry and the data and the engineers and everybody, because they were getting him to do quite a lot of complicated mapping adjustments on the steering wheel. And I mean, I guess it would be a great question for like Zach Brown or something. What exactly are they doing on the steering wheel at that time? But compared to your days in IndyCar, when you look at those wheels and you see their range of adjustments, it must make your head explode.
Yeah, I mean, it's just incredible how many tools you have within the car now in a Formula One car, and all the adjustments and all the knobs and all the switches and the paddles on the back. There's just probably way too much for me to be able to deal with, because I generally, and you could probably say this as well, when you have a good car and you don't adjust anything, you just drive it and it's good, and you're not having to mess around with it and play with the bars, it's just good, right? So that's like the races that I've won in the past, I don't think I've made any adjustments during the race. But I mean, there's so much going on now in Formula One, the technology, it's just incredible. But the worst case scenario is the difference between smelling gas and actually feeling the gas. Like, I don't know if you've ever gotten into a race car that's had a fuel leak and it's your seat all of a sudden it's wet and cold.
Yeah.
And then the next thing you know, your skin's burning from the fuel being on your skin. And that's worst case scenario, because then you don't know if a fire can start or not from the heat of the exhaust and the motor and everything else. So it's when you feel that it's actually now there's fuel in the cockpit, it's time to get out, because it could catch fire. Yeah,
I'm sorry. I mean, I thought he kept very calm, but he is that kind of a dude. But you don't often hear the smell of gas in Formula One, do you? Especially, no refueling, so we don't even have that dynamic. Yeah. But I thought it was very interesting little interaction. Obviously, strategy at this point started to play a big role. Everyone wondering whether they're going one stop, two stop, and you could see the predictions, and you could see Ferrari positioning themselves, asking the drivers for one, can he go the distance, to the window and things. Radio communication in Formula One, I know we only get it sporadically. We get selective, sporadic broadcasts, and we're hearing quite significant moments, not the whole thing. And it's interesting when like Toto Wolff came on, talking about George Russell getting a 5-second penalty for pushing Bottas out there. Communication. And you heard Lewis say, "Don't talk to me in the braking zone," which is weird, because in sports cars, I like with that front engine stuff I used to race, I almost needed to be talked to in the braking zone, Paul, because you couldn't hear it under full throttle with those big engines.
Yeah.
What do you make of the way they're able to communicate now, and what did you like?
I didn't mind. I mean, I didn't mind being talked to on a road course in the corners or in the braking zone. That didn't bother me too badly. On ovals, maybe less talk in the corner, because you're really concentrating in the corner, especially a place like Indy or Michigan or Fontana. So just really talk on the straightaway. But I mean, it was quite interesting, the George Russell thing. Obviously, having looked at it a lot closer now between the Max Lando and the George Bottas, obviously Bottas had the front axle ahead of George in the brake zone and into the apex, was forced to go around the outside, and George ran him out of room, and I believe he crossed the track limits line, right? So 5-second penalty for George. George was very upset, obviously. Toto, very upset. Now, their complaint is Max did the same thing with Lando, but when you go back and look at it and analyze it very closely, Max released the brake. He was behind Lando in the brake zone, released the brake, got the front axle ahead of Lando at the apex, which gave him the right to the corner.
Yeah.
He tracked it all the way out, but kept the car on the white line. He had one tire on the white line and made Lando run way wide around the outside, and Lando stayed in it and came out of the corner in front, which is a no-no. So that's just Max just has that ability to, he's a lot like Schumacher, where he just takes everything to the limit.
Yeah.
But he gets away with it. Whereas in the past, I mean, you look at some of the antics that Schumacher would get into with Villeneuve or Damon, and he would take things to the maximum, but sometimes it would end up in a crash. Whereas Max, he never seems to get into too many crashes where it takes himself out.
Yeah. I mean, there's so much to dig into there because, we ran, saying masterclass is quite a broad and very all-encompassing thing. But his defense against Lando for the, I don't know, let's say 5-8 laps before that was so sublime. He could put the car exactly where he needed. And you know that feeling, Paul. You can catch up someone by a second a lap, like Lando did. Very dominantly, you're in that hunting mode, aren't you? And Max is in the hunted mode. And we've all, you know that feeling in the pit of your stomach. You're like, I'm going to get him. I'm whatever it takes, I'm getting there. And as a driver, if you don't sort of, and I think Oscar Piastri is brilliant at this, he just makes his move and doesn't give the guy a chance to think about it twice. Lando does sort of hesitate a bit and show his hands, but run me through what it's like in Max's position. Once someone starts showing the moves that they have at their disposal, you can sort of cover them off, can't you?
Yeah, and I don't think, I mean, Piastri is very, very good. Obviously, he's very quick. I don't think he's had as many races with Max, whereas Lando and Max have raced together quite a lot through the years of, even through junior formula, karting, all of that. So they've got a lot of experience with each other, and Max will push you to the very limit. So, and that being said, Max is obviously he's excellent at attacking, and being on the offensive, and he's also very, very good on the defensive of protecting his position. So a lot like Alonso. Alonso is a great on offense, and he's great on defense as well. But I'll tell you what, Liam Lawson, he got under Alonso's skin, didn't he?
Boy, oh boy. I mean, you saw the pictures on Instagram. There was one shot of Alonso the one I'm talking about, and you can tell the look on his face. He's like, "Rah!" And I don't care. Yeah. It would make me soil my pants if I had Fernando Alonso in my face, right? As you imagine, you're a 22-year-old or 21-year-old, and you get arguably one of the best of all time. And it did bring something home for me though. In that sprint, but I see it in the qualifying runs, in the practice, and it's so easy to block someone here in Formula One, right? Especially when they're doing the qualifying, and I think they do a great job of missing each other. I do think we're due for a big rear end at some point, right? There's no way in qualifying when they're all slowing down to 30 miles, 50 miles an hour, that I just don't know how they choreograph that. But he came back the next day and into the main race and was racing with Alonso, which must have, I don't care how aggressive he is, and confident, he must have been like, oh crap, I'm up against the guy that, once again, I'm on the track with Fernando Alonso. But they had a really nice race. Yeah,
and even that, when Liam had a grid penalty, was qualified further back in the pack and drove, through the pack, through some super tough competitors, Alonso being the toughest, and into the points. And both him and Colapinto, both very impressive.
Yeah.
For two rookies, obviously, like you said, I was listening to you earlier, Colapinto, no seat right now, but deserves a seat based on how he's been running. He's been scoring points for Williams. Obviously, the choice was very clear to take Sargent out of the car. This guy has done a fantastic job. And now, shame for Ricardo, but I mean, what a debut by Liam. Drives through the pack, gets points in his first race. I mean, you can't expect anything else. You couldn't expect anything better than that, right?
No, you couldn't. And I think the big thing is that if you get your moment to shine in Formula One, and you have to take it and have that highlight moment. And I used to say about Logan, the problem was he didn't have a highlight moment. Enough of them to make you go, wow. Liam comes in, gets that 10th, 9th position. It is so good and so meaningful, and the same for Franco. But talk about
and then not only that, but his debut to run like that, and Yuki kind of faltered, had a messy weekend, spun in the race, not a good result. So the question now is, does this put Liam Lawson in the number one position to maybe replace Perez next year? That's because Perez he's just not performing. He's just not going fast enough for that seat, right?
No,
let's just be honest. He's a nice guy. He's a popular guy. He's going to have a huge response in Mexico in his hometown race, but I mean, he's got to have a big weekend this next weekend in Mexico City, or it's
it's done. I
the
think
writing's on the wall, right?
Talk, Paul, about the important. I mean, Christian Horner mentioned it, and you can see his frustration coming through. Formula One for a long time, the last few years, obviously Max out front, everyone else scrapping for the remains on the table. Now you've got them fighting in packs, working together as a pack of two, right? Ferrari, you got Mercedes, you got the Williams. I mean, you got these guys doing that, and not Red Bull. It's now becoming critical that you have two cars able to work together at the same level. What are those dynamics? What does it open up for the team? What does it open up for Ferrari that doesn't open up for Red Bull right now?
Well, I mean, the Constructors' Championship is so important for the teams, right? It's equally as important as the Drivers' Championship. And you have to have two drivers capable of scoring points every weekend. And not only that, taking points away from McLaren. Like, obviously, Red Bull's now fighting with McLaren for the Constructors. Ferrari is now in the picture, I believe, for Constructors, aren't they?
Yes, they are.
With this result. Yeah. So, I mean, Perez has got to step up and start scoring podiums now, and he's not. He's running 10th, 9th, 10th, 8th.
Yeah.
And it's just not good enough for that car. It's just not good enough, right?
Yeah. It is a tough seat to fill, but if I were to be in the second seat to Max Verstappen, but thinking about it, putting the driver's head on, imagine you or I getting the opportunity. We're full of confidence. We're a young guy. It's better to go up against the best of the decade right now, because people are always going to give you that as a little bit of a credit in your pocket. Oh, you finished second to Max? That's amazing. And on the occasions that you can be faster. And I definitely think these young guys, Paul, the delta between the experience and the lack of experience pace-wise, because of the way they're trained now, the amount of sim work they do and everything, I think it's a smaller delta than it was in our day when someone came in. It would be a hell of a way to make your name in Formula One, to be the understudy to Max Verstappen, wouldn't it, for someone like Liam?
Well, I mean, it was for anybody, right? Back in the day, Senna was the standard. Schumacher was the standard. There was no sims. When you came into Formula One, you had to, go and learn a track by walking it and driving it. Now these drivers, talking about Liam, he's been on the sim all season, and comes in, and I haven't driven a high dollar sim. I don't know if you have or not. I've driven a sim that's about $3 million.
Okay.
The Aston Martin sim that Heart of Racing has.
Yeah.
And it's a very expensive sim where it moves around on the floor and it's like high dollar, but it's still not the same. Like the tire model is not correct. You can't feel the tire connected to the road. It's still a dead feeling. But like I said, I haven't driven a sim that is a Formula One style sim. So I don't know what it's like, but obviously these young drivers are coming in and they're ready to go right out of the box. They're up to speed right away. So obviously the correlation is obviously very, very good, right?
Yeah. I mean, that preparation obviously rolls them into being able to perform on the track so well. I mean, we've got, it was interesting. Who's in the McLaren this weekend in FP1 in Mexico? I wrote it down. We've got Pato Award's
Pato, yeah, that'd be awesome.
Think about the preparation he's going to need. He's a heck of a driver, proves it in IndyCar all the time, gets to go in the McLaren in FP1. You don't want to do the old spin-off like the Italian kid did the other day, and binned it in you don't want to do that, but you do want to prove your worth. I think FP1's quite a double-edged sword, isn't it, for a young driver?
It is, but the problem for a lot of these teams in FP1, Pato's got a great deal with Zach and IndyCar, and I just don't right now. I mean, obviously his goal, I would think, is to get to Formula One, but right now, I mean, they've got two fantastic drivers at McLaren.
Yeah,
and there's no space, right? No. So the opportunity is there to show his hand, show what he can do. But I would say first and foremost goal is to try to win an IndyCar championship, and he was very competitive this year. But getting up to the next level, I just don't see anything opening up right now, and I think that's what happened with signed with Zach. He was going to get an F1 deal, and then all of a sudden, Piastri comes along, and then there was no opportunity for him. So he broke the contract with Zach, and I don't even know if that lawsuit is settled yet.
I don't know.
With Zach and Chip, and
there's still no. I don't think they invite each other to birthday parties still. So that's
not
happening. So listen, I want to. Oh, I tell you who I was thinking about when I knew you were going to come on the show, and thinking about Kevin Magnussen, because there are a couple of similarities in the way you drive. He gets on it. He's pretty merciless. It's great knowing he's never going to set at the end of the year. It will be the end of his Formula One career. But he has got all sporty. A great race for him. And I actually really appreciate what he brings to the sport and the way he is so dogged and determined. You a Kevin fan? Do you like watching him?
Yeah, I do enjoy watching him, but he has had, let's be honest, there's a lot of new young talent coming along, and they're obviously, like I've said, they've shown a lot of speed and a lot of talent right out of the box. And, Magnussen has been there a long time, had some good results, but it's a roller coaster, right? Yeah. It's like up and down, and the time is up. Racing is a performance business, and if you're not performing, then there's somebody else that they can find to perform, right? So, I would like to see Magnussen actually get a chance in Indy cars. Maybe something opens up for him in that. But sports cars is another option. GTP prototype cars. Obviously, he was very good when he was with Chip. In that, I don't know if there's an opportunity to go back to Chip in that program, because he kind of left Chip. I think he had a contract with Chip and left to go back to F1 when the door opened back up. So Chip really is not one of those guys that likes you to just say see you later after he gives you a chance, right?
Yeah, exactly. Well, we wish him luck anyway. It's fun to watch, and he's a bit of a spoiler. And he doesn't give a crap whether you're in the hunt for the championship. He doesn't give a, you know what I mean? I love the fact he just gets on and races, and he brings something to it. But as you say, it's about to be the era of some of these young guys. Let's go back to the Max and Lando incident as he came in there down the end of that straight. You know the corner. It's easy to carry speed in there, and he set himself up so well. He blocked. Lando was going to have to go the long way around. When you're on the broadcast, you get pretty animated about a situation like that. It's hard for the guys in the booth to call other than with the information that you have in front of you. But I'll just tell you mine, and I want your position. I thought to myself, he's going to just back off in the right place, let Max by, and then try for a retake. Now, I know they got some sort of rules about that immediate retake, but I think if the roles were reversed, Max would have timed it perfectly, because as you say, Max does these things absolutely perfectly when he has to execute. Let him by and then get into a DRS zone and just go by legally, because the consequences for just gambling on the steward decision was a bit risky, in my opinion.
Well, I mean, he was much quicker than Max at that point in the race. Obviously, chased him down from 5 or 6 seconds back after the pit stop, had fresher tires, chased him down, caught him, made the pass. It was deemed not legal because he was outside the track. But I think if he would have just got back behind him, he would have gotten by him again.
Yeah.
Right. Because he was much quicker than him at that point in the race. So I think it was a tactical mistake by Lando to just continue on and pretend like he was pushed off the track. Because he let the car go way off the track and carry a lot of speed. And he came back onto the track, I think, 2 car lengths in front of Max. So he made no attempt to try to, slow down outside of the track limits. So, again, like I said, Max positioned his car perfectly. He made sure at the apex that his front axle was in front of Lando's, which technically what gave him the right to the corner, and he kept it inside the track limits. So I think technically a mistake by Lando to just continue on and not expect. If he were just backed off, got back behind, and gone at it again, he probably could have gotten by in a couple more laps or the next lap, and then no 5-second penalty, because after that, I think it was very close in the end. Wasn't only a half a second difference.
Yeah, he got to 4.3 seconds ahead. It's almost in the 5-second buffer. You analyze that so well, but when what was it, 2015 or 17, when they came up with the Max rule, right, about the moving under braking, and it literally was designed because he had mastered that and exploited the rules to the fullest then. Now we have it on these tight corners, rolling through, opening your hands up, which, let's face it, he probably didn't need to do. But you are entitled to open your hands towards the edge of the track there, forcing the guy off. He knew exactly what he was doing in every single inch of that maneuver. I wonder if they're going to have to address that, because you could do it on every corner, right? I mean, you could actually...
Well, you
could do it.
You can do that on every single corner if there's wide open runoff to do that. But I guarantee you that if there was a wall there, like Monaco, Lando would have to back off and get back in line, or he wouldn't just drive himself into the wall, right?
Yeah.
So, that's the thing about these tracks now that are designed with these huge runoff zones. It allows drivers to just drive okay, here's the line. You can't go past this line. Treat the line like a wall. But most of them don't, right? Because if it was a street course, you'd drive yourself into the wall and you'd be out of the race, right?
Yeah. I wonder, I mean, this it could be very dangerous, but it would be interesting with the amount of data, the amount of the GPS being so accurate, with a track like COTA, rather than put a gravel trap out there, which brings up all the danger of that, and they can't run motorbikes there, etc., etc. It would be interesting if there was a electronic retardation or something. If you get all four wheels off and it's just black and white, that you end up, your power's backed off while you're over that line for a second. It would be interesting. I mean, I'm probably going to get shot down for this, but it's got to be a hard consequence, the same as a wall.
I've always thought that they like, I've been to a couple tracks when we raced in Assen in Indy cars back in the day. And if you got off the track, there was big runoffs for the motorcycles there, but they attached some type of like an AstroTurf, like a fake grass to, and once you got on that grass, you just started to slide and you lost traction. So maybe there was a system where they could put something down on the track and make it really slippery, or some type of, paint that is really slick, so that if you do get out there, you just lose all your traction and grip.
Yeah,
but right now you can run out there and not really lose any time, right?
Yeah,
so
that's the thing with Austin. It is a track. That's why the club racers love it so much. That's why it's so popular for track days. You can spin for days. You can go off for miles.
Yeah.
It is a little disconcerting, and is a track without consequences. Well, I mean, it wasn't a great race. It folded into a very dynamic one with a lot of consequences, brought Ferrari into the fray. So many winners in so many races.
Yeah.
How are we looking at the end of the year? I mean, Mexico this weekend, Perez will probably find wings as a one-off. I'm sure that's the case. But then what happens in the championship? What happens in these next few races? Coming into Vegas here, one of the best street tracks we had last year. I mean, what's your opinion on the rest of the season?
I mean, the Constructors Championship is the big race right now. Max has a big enough points lead, and he extended his points lead over Lando, right? Because of the penalty. So, he extended. So what does he have? 52 point lead
or
now?
7, I think, something like that.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's a big number to overcome in the amount of races that are left. He built up that lead early in the season. Now, obviously, McLaren has gotten much better. The cars are much better. I think the McLaren is a faster car.
Yeah.
Right now, and Lando has the advantage over Max. Max is still driving very well, and he's got a big enough points lead to where he just has to keep finishing well, and then the championship is his without having a major mistake, crashing out of a race, or having any mechanical failures or car failures. I think the championship is still Max's, but it's obviously going to go down to the wire, but I think he's got a big enough points lead to where it's all he has to do is manage what he's doing, right?
Yeah. It's a very good point. I think we're in for some spectacular racing, and of course next year should be the same, even more wide open, and then we get 26 when the rules will change and everything will probably turn to crap. But one team will dominate, and it could be Williams for all we know, or Mercedes. So so much to play for. Well, it's now time for the Mobil1 Pit Stop for the love of driving. Paul, I got a few quick questions for you here. What about modern Formula One racing makes you wish you were 21 years of age again? Is it the speed, the popularity of the drivers, or the money?
I think it's a combination of everything. I'm not super crazy about I do like the look of the cars, but when you see them in person, they're just so big and long. I'm still when you see a Senna McLaren or a Schumacher Benetton, I mean, those cars were just so sexy, and Formula One cars are still very sexy. It just, when you see them in person, they're just so long. Yeah, it's quite incredible that they can get around some of these tight tracks like Monaco. But I mean, it's everything. It's the glamour, it's the glitz, it's the salaries, it's the atmosphere. The whole thing is electric, right?
Yeah. Which of the current crop of top Formula One drivers do you wish you'd been on track with to race against head to head?
I mean, obviously, Max is the standard, right? So he's the top man, right?
Yeah, Max would be the one for sure. Who, actually, as a matter of interest, you are Canadian, but who is your Formula One racing hero from any generation?
I mean, Gilles was obviously a hero of mine when I was a kid growing up. That myself and my dad, we watched Formula One when Gilles was racing, and then obviously as I got into being a teenager, Senna was my favorite. I've always gravitated towards the aggressive, no holds barred kind of drivers.
Yeah. Talking about aggression, you also love controversy, and you're not shy about it in the TV booth. Would you accept the job of a F1 steward if you were asked?
Yeah. I think I have a pretty good understanding of what's right and what's wrong on the racetrack because I've done it all. I know every dirty trick in the game because I've done every dirty trick that there is to do. So I know I tend to know what drivers are thinking before they even think about it, right? Because I've done it and I've lived it. And I don't know who the stewards are now, but I know in the past a lot of them have been drivers that have been retired for quite a long time, and maybe not as active as some of the younger guys.
Yeah, good answer. When you were racing and you reflect back on it, outside yourself, of course, who were you on track with that you thought, you know what, if they got a shot at F1, they could make it?
I mean, it's from coming from an IndyCar background. I mean, there was a lot of politics, and that, in my era of IndyCars in the beginning of my career, when Mansell came to IndyCars, and I went up head to head with him. My rookie season in '93, Mansell won the championship. He won 5 races. I won 5 races. I feel that I lost that championship just by the mistakes I'd made because I threw away 3 wins. Phoenix, I crashed out. Milwaukee, I crashed out. In Mid-Ohio, I crashed out, all from the lead. And I feel that if I would have gotten a chance to get to F1, I had a chance to go to F1 when I drove a test for Benetton, but it was a really poor contract, and it was a Flavio contract where it was just, there was all kinds of loopholes in it, and me having to pay him 50% of everything I make for the rest of my life. So I feel that I could have made it in Formula One if I'd have had a good chance. I never got a second chance to go, but obviously there's guys that I thought, I felt Michael was capable of doing well in F1. I don't think he set himself up for the best results because he wanted to live in America and travel back and forth to tests, and didn't get that much testing. But his last race, he still finished on the podium. So the potential was there. And obviously, and the other guys that I raced against was Montoya was obviously, came to IndyCar, won championships, and then went to Formula One and ran very well in Formula One.
Yeah. Good stuff. I might have to put that in the main show because that's a great answer and not as part of the pit stop. All right. Who will win the Drivers' Championship? Max or Lando? Will he catch up?
I think it's going to be Max. I think, like I said, Max is going to have to just manage the rest of the season. I don't feel that the Red Bull is the best car right now. Right now, they're maybe the second best car. And if Ferrari continues the way they did last weekend, maybe they're the third best car. So for Max, he has to just pick his battles and continue to keep scoring points.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Paul. That was the Mobil1 Pit Stop for the love of driving. Well, Paul, it was very interesting hearing you talk about Nigel Mansell, because I guess as a driver, we can only use our competition, right, as the yardstick. And every great athlete says they want to race against the best of their era to say they beat the best of their era. And Nigel Mansell, for a British racing fan, he was the archetypal tough guy, right? I mean, he'd get out of the car so exhausted he'd fall over, he'd cry, he'd vomit, and his battles with Prost and Senna were legendary.
Yeah.
Him coming into IndyCar, I remember thinking to myself, this will be a great moment for everyone in IndyCar to gauge themselves against arguably one of the best, as well as for him to appreciate American style racing. Do you remember anything about his driving style? It's just me asking, really. You know, you were out there on track with him, and I'd love to get him on the show one day. What about his driving could you see why he was a Formula One champion?
Why, he was just tenacious, right? He never gave up. And I'll just tell a story, and he tells this story a lot. He went to Phoenix, his first oval, early in the season. It was either the second or third race in the season. Crashed in practice, broke his back, knocked a hole this big in the concrete wall, right? Broke his back, came back, and won, I think, 2 or 3 of the next oval races. So, I mean, you think about that, right? Yeah, and you've driven on ovals. You know how daunting they were back in those days. There was no safer barriers. There was no headrest pads. Your head was out of the car. The cockpit was basically at your shoulder. You had a strap around your neck to hold your head in place. And the cars were going, well over 200 miles an hour. At Indy, 230, 35 miles an hour. So to come back from that type of an accident and then win your next oval event was pretty special, really, when you think about it.
Yeah, what a man. Well, I'm looking forward to Mexico this week. I think we're going to have a fun race as you look at it. I mean, there's Ferrari are on fire, right? I mean, Mexico is going to, I think it's going to suit McLaren. It's the first race there, if you think about it, but was run in 1963. I mean, that's got some history there. Jim Clark taking that first win. The altitude, 2 kilometers above sea level, that's a demand. That's a demand on the drivers cardiovascularly and puts a different sort of tolerance on the engines. Altitude, that wipes you out, man.
Yeah, we used to race Indy cars there a couple times. I won there, and the straightaway is very long. The cars now being turbocharged make just as much power at altitude as they do at sea level. You've got a lack of downforce because of the altitude, the thin air, and also a lack of brake cooling, which is a big issue for the cars there because you just don't get as much air across the brakes. So they go very, very fast down the straightaway. There's lots of braking at Mexico City. It's a slippery track. It's pretty dirty offline, so balance is important. It's a fun race. The crowd goes wild there.
Crowd goes wild. I think you brought up a very good point, and that's why Las Vegas was so good last year, because the temperature was down, so the cars moved, the braking distance is extended, and anytime you do that, I mean, the answer to good overtaking is make the braking less good, right? And the cars move around. So everything you're saying means that we might have more reaction to the DRS, because obviously that's going to be super effective, and they're going to arrive at the braking zones that much more fast. I think it's going to be a very exciting weekend. I mean, Red Bull and McLaren still the main players, but they've definitely going to have the Ferrari confidence up. And I talk about it a lot on the show. When a guy gets that winning way in his mind, you really start to become a little invincible, don't you?
Well, yeah, I mean, you can lose the confidence. Obviously, mid-season, Ferrari, both drivers were lacking confidence, and now to come away with a 1-2, that just brings the confidence back, and it's going to be a super dynamic, finish to the championship in the next however many races. Was 7, 8 races left?
5, I think, only 5.
So I think it's going to be highly, highly entertaining.
Yeah, it's going to be very exciting. Well, I think going into it, McLaren will have the best car on paper, but that hasn't meant anything when it comes down to these races. Are you going to come to Vegas, Paul?
I'm thinking about it. I haven't looked into it yet, so I'd like to. I need to make some calls to see if I can get hooked up with the good passes like I did last year to get in the garage area, because I'm not one to just want to sit around in the grandstand. So as well as I do, getting the good pass into one of these F1 races is that's a job in itself.
It is, and we're not cute social media influencers anymore.
Yeah,
not that we ever were. So therefore, they're the ones that fill the grid. don't forget, next weekend on the 2nd of November, it's the Las Vegas Concours. So I don't know if you fancy come. I'll hook you up there. It's going to be amazing. We got some beautiful cars, just some incredible people coming, and Magnus Walker's coming. Renee Brinkhoff with the car with the sled, her 356 with the sleds on. It's going to be really cool. So if you want to come, let me know. It'll be a fun weekend.
Okay.
Well,
send me the info on it.
I will do. Well, Paul, thank you very much for being on the show. I'm glad we got into it, and lots to talk about. We'll do it again. And if you come to Vegas, you can do it here in person. So we'll get you on the show. Kind of fun.
All right. Thanks, Justin.
All right, man. Well, you won't want to miss this weekend-long celebration that promises to be the social event of the fall season. The 3rd annual Concours at Wynn Las Vegas returns on Friday, November 1st through Sunday, November 3rd. Considered one of the world's most prestigious automotive events, Concours will feature more than 200 luxurious and rare automobiles within 5 judged and non-judged pillars for vehicle entry and display. Concours d'Elegance, speed, innovation, culture, ultra luxury, and coach built. We hope to see you here for this unforgettable weekend right at the Wynn Las Vegas. For more information regarding tickets and room packages, you can visit LasVegasConcours.com. That's LasVegasConcours.com. Well, listen, thank you everybody for watching a great episode of Drive to Win. So much. They got so much happening. We got 3 races on the trot, then a little 2-week break, and then into the final 3 races of the year. Of course, the first of those will be here in Las Vegas. Thank you very much for the Win for accommodating us so beautifully, and of course to Mobil1 for their support all the way through. I will see you next week. Enjoy this weekend's race, and I'm sure we'll have lots to talk about. See you later.